Success is not a gift of fate, but a consequence of self-control. Carl Gustav Jung. Before we begin, here's a small ritual. Write in the comments one word that accurately describes your current state. Sign it, and let's get started. Everyone talks about sexual energy as if it were only about vitality, stamina, or physical drive. They say it makes a man stronger, calmer, more productive, more disciplined. And yes, those things are real, but there is something almost no one ever speaks about. Sexual energy, when retained and not wasted, does more than give strength to the body or focus to the mind. It changes your luck. It alters the invisible flow that decides whether doors open for you or slam shut. It is the silent force behind success, the hidden current that turns chaos into clarity. And once you see this connection, you will understand why so many men live as if cursed, while a few walk as if fortune itself bends toward them. From the first moment a man chooses retention, his system begins to adapt. Hormones rebalance, neurotransmitters shift. Melatonin rises not only in sleep, but in the very cortex where ideas and vision are born. That shift creates a state where intuition sharpens, where creativity accelerates, and where the mind starts catching signals that others miss. People call it coincidence, but it is not coincidence. It is the biology of a man who is no longer leaking his essence into emptiness. His mind becomes tuned to patterns. His steps align with opportunities, and life begins to mirror the energy he carries within. History is filled with examples. Nikola Tesla spoke of celibacy as a foundation for his clarity. Leonardo da Vinci hinted that sexual restraint heightened his imagination. Isaac Newton lived with an intensity that poured his inner fire into discovery instead of distraction. These were not accidents. They were men who discovered that the same force that creates life can also create genius, fortune, and vision when it is held and transformed. You have seen it in your own life, even if you did not connect the dots. After wasting energy, there is apathy, doubt, distraction, a fog that makes every decision heavy. After discipline, there is a sudden sharpness, a sense that obstacles melt and paths appear where none existed before. This is not magic. It is not superstition. It is the direct result of where your energy flows. Spill it outward, and life becomes resistance. Hold it inward, and reality itself bends differently around you. That is what most psychologists, most coaches, most so-called mentors never say. They talk about affirmations, motivation, or positive thinking. But without energy, those things are empty. With energy, even silence carries authority. Sexual energy is not just about desire or drive. It is the root of creation itself. And when you stop wasting it, when you learn to carry it, it transforms you into a different kind of man. A man who does not beg for luck, but draws it. A man who does not chase success, but becomes the center around which success moves. The truth is simple. The man who wastes becomes weaker. The man who retains becomes magnetic. It may sound harsh, but it is the law no one can escape. If these words strike something inside you, subscribe to the channel and join the Telegram community. The algorithms will carry this message to other men who are ready to face their shadow. And if you want to help me bring more of these hidden truths to light, become a sponsor of the channel. Together we can create a space where men stop running from their power and start living it. Most men have been told all their lives that success comes from positive thinking, constant motivation, and endless self-improvement hacks. They repeat affirmations, read surface-level books, and follow gurus who promise quick transformations. Yet after years of trying, they still feel stuck, unlucky, or cursed with failure. The reason is not lack of effort or lack of belief. The reason is that all these methods avoid the one truth that society hides. When a man loses his sexual energy, he loses the very fuel that builds luck and success. No amount of slogans can cover up the emptiness left behind when energy is wasted. When a man releases constantly, his nervous system is thrown into cycles of highs and crashes. Dopamine spikes briefly, but then falls into depletion, leaving him restless and dissatisfied. This pattern trains the brain to chase instant gratification instead of long-term vision. It creates a psychological trap. The man knows what he wants, but he cannot sustain the energy to reach it. He calls it bad luck, but in reality, it is his biology sabotaging him. The system encourages this sabotage because industries thrive on men who stay distracted, drained, and addicted. From pornography to consumer culture, everything is designed to keep the masculine force diluted. A man without his energy is easy to manipulate, easy to sell to, easy to keep small. This is why the usual advice to think positive or just work harder often fails. It does not address the root. A man cannot simply think himself into success when his life force is leaking out of him. Without retention, focus collapses, intuition shuts down, and willpower becomes a fight against his own biology. It is like trying to light a fire with wet wood. No matter how much effort he applies, the spark will not catch. And so he blames himself, or fate, or luck, never realizing that the very act of losing his energy has turned him against himself. On the other hand, when a man begins to practice retention, something remarkable happens. His energy no longer rises and falls in chaotic waves. It stabilizes. His dopamine system resets, giving him natural motivation instead of artificial highs. His attention sharpens, his sleep deepens, and his mood steadies. Suddenly, the same affirmations or actions that once felt empty now begin to work because they are supported by real power. The system does not want men to know this because a man who retains cannot be easily controlled. He does not need constant external stimulation. He becomes harder to manipulate and therefore harder to exploit. The illusion that success is only about mindset collapses once you see this clearly. Mindset matters, but only when it is powered by energy. Without energy, the strongest mindset is fragile. With energy, even an ordinary mindset becomes unstoppable. This is the reason so many men who try every motivational method end up disappointed. They were not weak, they were not lazy, they were drained. And until they reclaim their energy, luck and success will always seem out of reach. Science gives us more than enough proof that retention is not superstition or fantasy. Freud spoke of libido as the central force of human life, not just sexual desire, but the raw energy that drives ambition, creation, and survival. Jung added that when this energy is repressed or wasted without awareness, it does not disappear. It returns through the shadow, showing up as destructive habits, compulsions, or endless cycles of failure. Modern neuroscience confirms what these pioneers intuited. When a man retains, his brain enters a different rhythm. Neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin stabilize instead of burning out. Testosterone levels rise, which fuels confidence, decisiveness, and risk-taking. Cortisol, the stress hormone, falls, allowing the mind to enter states of focus and flow that most men never experience. One of the most overlooked connections is with melatonin, often called the sleep hormone, but in truth, it is far more. Melatonin regulates circadian rhythms, immune function, and even acts as a potent antioxidant for the brain. Studies show that when sexual energy is retained, melatonin levels are supported in a unique way, not just at night, but through the day as deeper calm and clarity in the cortex. This balance creates conditions for higher creativity, problem-solving, and long-range thinking. In simple terms, retention protects the brain's ability to generate insights. Insights are what people call luck. They are the sudden sparks that show you the right step at the right moment. Researchers observing men during periods of abstinence noticed clear improvements in mental performance, energy conservation, and motivation. In one study, men who practiced retention reported sharper concentration and stronger willpower within just a week, with even more profound changes after longer periods. Another line of research connects retention with increased production of neuropeptides that regulate mood and learning. These findings align with ancient traditions that always claimed sexual energy is not meant only for reproduction, but for transformation of consciousness itself. Think of luck not as random chance, but as alignment. When your hormones are balanced, your neurotransmitters stable, and your nervous system calm yet energized, you see opportunities that others overlook. You make decisions without hesitation because your mind is not clouded by depletion. You speak with a presence that others interpret as confidence. All of this changes how people respond to you, and that response is what often determines whether success flows or fails. The world reacts differently to a man who holds his energy. Even modern business psychology indirectly acknowledges this. High performers often enter states of flow where productivity and creativity peak. Retention is one of the hidden gateways to flow. It reduces distraction, lowers anxiety, and channels attention into the task at hand. What looks from outside like luck is, on the inside, a man whose system is fully aligned with his purpose. This is not mystical, it is biological. It is not about waiting for fortune. It is about creating the inner conditions where fortune naturally comes. That is why retention must be seen not as denial, but as discipline that unlocks the mechanisms of real success. History gives us undeniable evidence that retention has always been tied to greatness, even if it was rarely spoken about directly. Nikola Tesla admitted that celibacy was not a burden, but a source of extraordinary clarity, allowing him to focus every ounce of energy on invention. Leonardo da Vinci filled his notebooks with ideas that seemed beyond his era, and those close to him noted his restraint and discipline with sexual energy. Isaac Newton, who reshaped science, lived with intensity and isolation, channeling his drive into discovery instead of indulgence. These men did not stumble into genius by chance. They understood, consciously or instinctively, that the same force which creates life, when retained, can fuel creation of entirely new worlds of thought. In modern times, the same pattern appears, though it is often hidden under different names. Elite athletes frequently speak of abstaining from sexual release before competition, claiming it preserves aggression, focus, and stamina. Some entrepreneurs and artists quietly practice periods of retention, noticing that during these times, ideas flow with unusual sharpness and risks pay off more often. They describe coincidences, sudden meetings, or breakthroughs as if luck followed them. What they are really describing is the shift in presence and energy that changes how the world responds to them. Luck is not separate from biology. it is amplified by it. A man who radiates stored energy unconsciously influences those around him, and that influence opens doors others never see. The link between retention and success is not superstition, but a pattern repeated across centuries. Men who leak their energy constantly tend to remain trapped in cycles of distraction and mediocrity. Men who channel it often rise above their environment, no matter how hostile it appears. This is why so many spiritual traditions taught sexual control as a foundation, not just for morality, but for power. The system ridicules it today because a man who retains is harder to enslave by consumption and addiction. His focus cannot be sold, his attention cannot be hijacked, his ambition cannot be diluted. Look at your own life, and you will see echoes of this pattern. Times of discipline always carry unexpected rewards, often described as good fortune. Times of indulgence often carry a hidden cost: missed chances, failed momentum, unexplained setbacks. The difference is not fate, it is energy. Retention concentrates force, and that force bends probability in your favor. What others call luck is often the direct result of invisible preparation, of energy preserved long enough to transform into action, clarity, and timing. This is why the connection between sexual energy and success remains the greatest secret hidden in plain sight. Most men chase techniques, strategies, or external validation, but ignore the inner fuel that determines whether those strategies work. Retention is the multiplier. It does not guarantee an easy life, but it guarantees that when opportunities appear, you will have the strength to seize them. That strength is what separates men who drift from men who rise. Most men who attempt retention eventually fail, not because they are weak or undisciplined, but because they have been set up to fail from the start. Modern culture is built to drain masculine energy at every turn. From endless pornography to constant advertising that sells sex as the highest pleasure, everything is designed to keep men distracted and depleted. A man who wastes his energy regularly is easy to control, easy to manipulate, and easy to keep consuming without ever building anything real. The industries that profit from this weakness have no interest in men discovering that their power, luck, and success are directly tied to their to hold and transform sexual energy. The truth is that the world laughs at retention because it fears what disciplined men could become. A man who learns to carry his energy is no longer addicted to screens, shallow entertainment, or validation. He becomes independent of the system that feeds on his attention. That independence threatens every mechanism of control. This is why the idea of retention is ridiculed, called outdated, or dismissed as superstition. Yet behind the ridicule hides a silent terror. A man who retains is no longer predictable. He cannot be kept small, and he cannot be kept harmless. His presence alone challenges the fragile illusions around him. But the real battle is not only external, it is inside. The moment a man chooses retention, his shadow rises. Old wounds, repressed desires, and hidden fears surface with intensity. Many men mistake this eruption for failure, believing they are falling apart. In reality, they are finally seeing the truth of themselves. The sexual act was a distraction, a way to silence the discomfort temporarily. Without that escape, the discomfort comes forward demanding to be faced. This is why so many give up. They cannot bear to meet their own shadow. Yet this confrontation is the doorway to transformation. Without it, the cycle of release and regret continues endlessly. The system plays on this weakness by whispering guilt and shame. A man relapses and instantly calls himself worthless. That shame weakens him further, making another relapse almost inevitable. This loop is not natural, it is engineered. Guilt ensures he never rises above the cycle. True discipline does not come from punishment, but from awareness. When a man understands that relapse is not proof of weakness, but proof of the shadow demanding attention, he stops wasting energy on shame and starts using energy to learn. Awareness breaks the chain that shame locks around him. The harshest truth is that most men never break free because they keep searching for shortcuts. They want a trick, a hack, or a simple method that will let them avoid pain. But there is no path to retention without walking through discomfort. There is no strength without facing the hunger directly. Every man who has mastered his energy has faced nights of restlessness, days of frustration, and storms of doubt. What separates them is not superhuman willpower, but the willingness to endure and to learn. The ones who quit call it impossible. The ones who stay discover a power that feels almost supernatural. In reality, it is nothing mystical. It is simply the natural state of a man whose energy is finally his own. Retention is not about denying desire or pretending sexuality does not exist. It is about transforming the same force that drives instinct into a higher form of creation. When a man stops wasting his energy, he begins to feel it building inside his body. At first, this feels uncomfortable, even chaotic, because the nervous system is not used to holding such intensity. But if he chooses to channel it instead of fighting it, the energy starts to climb. Breathwork, movement, meditation, and focused work become the tools that direct it upward. The restless drive that once pushed him to release now becomes fuel for focus, creativity, and action. This is why men who practice retention often report sudden bursts of vision and productivity, as if the mind has been rewired to search for bigger challenges. Practical steps can make this transformation real. Deep breathing resets the nervous system and calms the tension that often drives relapse. Cold showers or physical training redirect arousal into resilience, teaching the body to hold energy under pressure. Writing in a journal or speaking honestly about inner struggles brings the shadow into light, which dissolves the hidden weight that sabotages progress. Even simple daily practices like going to bed earlier, avoiding overstimulation, and creating time for silence allow the brain to restore balance. These habits may sound ordinary, but combined with retention, they become extraordinary because the fuel behind them is no longer leaking away. The man who learns to live this way begins to notice something profound. His mind no longer searches for constant distraction. He can sit with himself without panic. He can work with full concentration without feeling drained. And most importantly, he begins to generate ideas and insights that feel far greater than his usual thinking. This is the cortex awakening under the influence of conserved energy. Creativity is not random. It is a direct outcome of how much energy the brain has available to process connections and patterns. Retention loads the system with that energy, and the result is vision. That vision translates into new solutions, business ideas, and life strategies that others call genius, but are simply the natural output of a man who no longer runs empty. Financial independence, personal leadership, and lasting confidence are not gifts handed out by chance. They are built on the ability to generate and sustain energy until it transforms into clarity. Every breakthrough in history followed this same principle: energy concentrated long enough to ignite a new reality. Retention is the discipline that ensures your energy is not wasted, but gathered until it reaches that ignition point. No shortcut can replace this. No quick method can substitute for it. When you master your energy, you no longer hope for success. You create the conditions where success becomes inevitable. The truth is that most men have the potential for extraordinary lives, but very few ever touch it because they refuse to hold their power long enough for transformation. They settle for release instead of mastery, for comfort instead of strength. Retention reverses that choice. It demands honesty, discipline, and patience, but it gives back something that cannot be faked: presence. A man with presence attracts luck, creates opportunities, and commands respect. That presence is the real proof that sexual energy, when retained, is not just biology, but destiny. Retention only becomes real power when it is directed. Without direction, the energy builds tension, but with focus, it becomes genius. To transform raw sexual energy into ideas and then into money, a man must learn to activate the hidden functions of his brain and keep them running long enough to create. The process is not mystical. It is discipline applied with precision. There are 5 practical steps that any man can begin today. Steps that are simple but powerful when fueled by retention. First, practice morning stillness. When you wake, do not touch your phone or rush into distraction. Sit in silence for 10 minutes, breathe deeply, and allow your mind to surface ideas. Retention sharpens intuition at this moment, and often the best insights of the day appear here if you give them space. Second, channel physical energy into structured movement. Heavy lifting, martial training, or even intense bodyweight exercise transmute arousal into strength. The body stops demanding release when it is pushed into performance. This not only stabilizes your discipline, but also increases testosterone, which fuels decision-making and confidence in business and life. Third, create a daily idea journal. Every day, write down 5 solutions, opportunities, or creative angles related to your work or finances. They do not need to be perfect. The act of writing forces the brain to connect patterns, and under retention, those patterns become sharper and more original. Over time, this journal becomes a goldmine of potential strategies. Fourth, use targeted visualization. Spend 5 minutes imagining yourself not just achieving a goal, but walking through the exact steps to reach it. Retention heightens the brain's ability to simulate outcomes. When you rehearse success in detail, the nervous system begins to recognize opportunities to make it real. Fifth, practice weekly deep focus sessions. Set aside 2 hours without phone or distraction to work only on one project that can move you toward financial independence. In this state, the extra energy stored by retention fuels concentration that most men cannot sustain. This is where ideas are not only born, but executed. If you follow these steps, retention stops being only about discipline and becomes a system for wealth and creation. You no longer just hold energy, you direct it into building the life you want. This is the real proof that sexual energy can shape not only your body and mind, but also your fortune. If these words speak to you, subscribe to the channel and join the Telegram community. Become a sponsor to help spread these truths further. And if you are ready to declare it, write in the comments, "My darkness is my power." Let us see how many men here are done running from themselves. This is only the beginning.